So why can't you do what you want to do? You want to change your diet. You want to work out more. You want to pursue a different goal within fitness, but you just can't seem to get it done. And if that's not you, why can't your family members or your friends do what they say they want to do? And ultimately, how can we help them out? How can I help you out if you're in that boat? And how can we help out our friends and family to be able to do the things they know they want to do, but they just can't seem to do? This is the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast, and we're here to build autonomous athletes and put phenomenal programming into every garage, basement, and spare bedroom out there. I'm Jerred Moon, and I'm with Joe Courtney. We are strength and conditioning coaches who have turned over 20,000 people into garage gym athletes over the last decade. And we're here to reduce the information overload that exists in the health and fitness industry today. We're going to do that by covering relevant science and give actionable takeaways, not only from the data, but from our years of experience. So let's dive in. All right, diving right in, I've been coaching for a long time, and I coach three different types of people. And here's how I will refer to them. The first is a ship. They're all going to be water related here. So the first is a ship. And if you think about a ship, like a cruise ship, something like that, it's got everything, right? It's fully equipped. It can go anywhere, do anything. It has every resource available. It's basically a moving city, right? This is the first athlete that I could coach, and they're a lot of fun. They're a lot of fun because they have every resource available, and they just need to be told where to go and what to do, a little bit of accountability, and they're good to go. Their training logs will be nearly 100% perfect week to week. Whatever you tell them to do, they're going to do. If you make diet adjustments, they're going to make those adjustments. They're going to execute them flawlessly. And they are a lot of fun to train and to coach this type of person, but that is definitely the minority for most people, most coaches out there. That's the minority. The next would be the life raft. So the life raft comes off the ship, right? Now, a life raft is still very equipped. A life raft has normally supplies in it. It can still withstand a long journey, and it can get where it's going to go. It's just a little bit harder. It needs that direction. But ultimately, the life raft will get back to the ship. The person in the life raft, they have all the resources. They have just enough resources, and they just need some oars in the water to get back to the ship and then get back to being one of those big, badass ships. And that's a life raft. That's the second type of person I typically find myself coaching. And this is someone who's been on track before. They know what it's like to succeed. They've achieved some goals in health and fitness, but maybe they've gotten pretty far off track. This can happen as life goes on. You just tend to not be into fitness as much, or life gets too busy for you to maintain your schedule, but you know what you should be doing, and you just need a little bit of guidance. You need a coach to get you back to where you were. Now, the last person I tend to coach is the life jacket, the life preserver. This is a person who's basically drowning, and they need you. They need you to be their life preserver. They need you to be their life jacket. And that if you weren't there, that's the only thing keeping their head above water. They are moments away from slipping underneath the water and never coming back up. And I've coached a lot of these people, and to be honest, these are the hardest people to coach because it's not a matter of, okay, here's the programming that you need, or here are the dietary changes you need to make. Here are the lifestyle changes you need to make. All those things are relatively easy. They're not hard to transcribe, write out for somebody, program. What's hard for people who are in the life jacket, life preserver mode is everything's pretty far screwed up. They may have never been fit in their entire life. They may be really out of shape, overweight. Their diet's awful. They don't have a community or peer group that supports this kind of thing. Their families have never been into fitness or health. They may even get made fun of for pursuing such a thing. And these are the hardest people to coach, and it's because it involves so much behavioral change. They have to change so much of who they are. So many habits need to change, so many behaviors, so many things that are ingrained into them, and things that have been ingrained into them since they were small children most of the time. And these people are very hard to coach, but they are also probably the most rewarding when you get a win. When they actually start seeing the needle move in any direction. They'll notice, oh, wow, I'm getting fitter. Oh, wow, I'm losing some weight. Hey, I'm sleeping better. Hey, I'm performing better. I feel like I'm thinking better. I'm a better mom. I'm a better dad. I'm a better husband, a wife. Like all these things get better, and they start to realize that the more that they pursue health and fitness and listen to what you have to say as a coach. But they are the hardest ones, and they're the hardest ones to get things done. And I'm sure that you even know people, like you might not even have a coach right now, but you can probably put yourself in one of these three categories. Yeah, I'm a ship, I'm a life raft, or you know what, I'm a life jacket, I just need a ton of help. And if after you label yourself in one of these areas, also think about your family members and your friends. Where are they at? Are they life jackets, life rafts, or ships? And how can you help? If you are a ship yourself, how can you help the people in your life who are the life jackets and they just need a little bit of help? Can you be that person? And I want to talk about that a little bit more today, and in the context of a scientific study that came out this year. And the name of this study is The Intention Behavior Gap in Physical Activity, a systematic review and meta-analysis of the Action Control Framework. So I'm going to read a quick synopsis of this study. And now, big picture overview. I love to cover systematic reviews in a meta-analysis, because what they're doing is they're drawing conclusions from studying studies, right? They're looking at all this different research. Then they have their selection criteria, and they weed it down, they whittle it down until they get down to, okay, here are our conclusions. Here are the takeaways from this study. And just so you know, the intention behavior gap in physical activity, if you're unaware of what the intention behavior gap is, it's pretty simple and self-explanatory. You might have an intention of wanting to do something, but your behavior doesn't match your intention, and that's the gap. That's the intention behavior gap is, I want to work out, I don't work out. Or I want to work out 6 days a week, I work out 3 days a week. There is I have an intention, but my behavior doesn't match my intention, and there's the gap. And this is actually studied quite a bit. You can pull up a lot of literature on this. So let's get into the overview. So this meta-analysis aimed to quantify the intention behavior gap in physical activity by reviewing 25 independent samples from 22 articles involving a total of 29,600 participants. The study found that 26% of participants were non-intenders, not exceeding their intentions. And I'll break these down a little bit more momentarily. 4.2% were non-intenders who exceeded their intentions. 33% were unsuccessful intenders, and 38.7% were successful intenders. The intention behavior gap was quantified at 47.6%, indicating that nearly half of those intending to engage in physical activity failed to do. This highlights the complexity of translating intentions into action and underscores the need for strategies and clinical practice to bridge this gap. The study is crucial in understanding how intention correlates with actual physical activity and in designing interventions to improve physical activity. So I want to talk a little bit more about these different categories, and maybe you can, again, categorize yourself or categorize your family or friends. Now, there is the first group, the non-intender, not exceeding intentions. And that was 26%. So this group includes individuals who did not have an intention to engage in physical activity, consistent with their lack of intention, did not engage in physical activity beyond what they intended. Okay, so non-intenders, not exceeding intentions are people who are like, I don't intend to work out, and I don't work out. That's 26%. They're just non-intenders, not exceeding their intentions. Great. And if you're listening to this, I actually doubt there's anybody listening to a podcast, the Garage Gym Athlete podcast, all about building autonomous athletes and about scientific studies and stuff. I highly doubt there are many non-intenders, not exceeding intentions listening to this, because why would they? But I'm sure there's some people in your life like that. Now there were non-intenders who exceeded intentions, which is 4.2% of them. So this category comprises individuals who originally did not intend to engage in physical activity, but ended up participating in more physical activity than they had intended. So this one is as it sounds, right? So they're like, I don't intend to work out. It's not something I want to do. But they're influenced maybe by some external factor or unplanned circumstance. And so it could be a friend who's, hey, let's go do a pickup game of basketball. Or it could be a spouse who's, hey, let's go on a walk. You might, in my opinion, this is probably someone who's forced or through social situations ends up doing a little bit more physical activity than they had ever planned. But this is only 4.2% of the people that they studied. So it's like, I have zero intention to exercise, and I exceeded that intention. So they exercised some. Now, the unsuccessful intenders. This is where, this is the people I want to help most, right? So these are individuals who had the intention to engage in physical activity, but failed to meet their intended level of physical activity. And so this could be any of us at any given time. Because like I said, it could be a number of things. It could be, I want to exercise, I intend to exercise, but I don't. And so that's just straight up, my intention is to exercise, but I don't exercise. But then it can be also just not meeting your own expectations. So if you're like I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, maybe you want to train 5 or 6 times a week, but you actually only ever get 2 or 3. So your intention for your physical activity doesn't actually meet your behavior. And there's a lot of reasons that this can happen, and I wouldn't beat yourself up over it. Happens to me quite frequently. I might, but like on a small scale, I might have 6 planned training sessions and I do 5, right? Like, and the reason these kind of things happen is just lack of time or unforeseen circumstances, right? That's something that can happen. And that's what happens to me most of the time. It was really my lack of planning, 100% on me every time. I just didn't plan. I let some time commitment go over the allotted amount of time it should have, and it closed my window to train that day. So there's a lot of that going on. And I'm going to talk about how to help those people, because that's the only real people I feel like we can help. Because you have the non-intenders not exceeding intentions. Okay, I'm not going to try and convince you that you should exercise and then also set intentions, and then that's too hard. And then the people who don't intend to exercise, who just end up exercising, that's just a weird category in my opinion, but hey, it's only 4.2% of people. But the unsuccessful intenders is where I want to really help people. And then there are obviously the successful intenders. So this group consists of individuals who intend to engage in physical activity and successfully meet or exceed their intended level of activity. So you're like, hey, I want to work out 5 times this week, and you do. Or you work out 6 times. Or I want to be a person who is super consistent with fitness, and you are that person. You have an intention around your physical activity, and you meet that intention with your behavior. And that's 38.7% of this pool of people. And so those are the 4 different groups. And I'm sure, like I said, you can put yourself in one of those categories. I feel like I'm sometimes an unsuccessful intender, and a lot of times the successful intender. And it can just vary week to week. And I'm sure that that's the same for a lot of you. But then, like I said, also keep in mind your family and friends. Where are they at? Are they non-intenders not exceeding intentions, non-intenders who exceed intentions, unsuccessful intenders? Like where do your family and friends shake out in this, as well as yourself? And what can we do about it? And that's what I wanted to talk about, stepping out of the science, because the science, in all honesty, if you read the study, doesn't give us a lot to go on. They're just kind of like, yeah, wow. It's like a coin flip. Because if you look at it, it literally is a coin flip. It says that the intention behavior gap was quantified at 47.6%, indicating that nearly half of those intending to engage in physical activity failed to do. Okay, so that is almost a coin flip. So we have all these people. Let's just say we take 100 people, and we all 100 are like, yes, I want to exercise. That's something I want to do. That's who I want to be. And maybe we quantify it down to I want to train, I want to work out 4 days this week. And only 50%, just a little over 50% are actually going to be able to do it, right? Or less, right? So the coin flip. So what's the difference here? Like literally why do we have this coin flip level? That's not normally how science works, down to a 50-50 chance. If you have the intention, you'll be able to do it. Now, I know if we got down to the individual level, we'd see a lot more changes. We would see the huge differences, I think, in the type of person that we're talking about with people who are successful intenders versus unsuccessful intenders. I think that we would see patterns in their lifestyles, in their life, in their careers, like where they have some simple habits that help them achieve. So I don't really think it's a 50-50 coin flip. I think it has to go back down to habits and actions and all that stuff. And that's what I want to dive into, because if we move out of science and we go back to coaching, and I'm like, okay, how can we help the unsuccessful intenders? And this is either you listening as an unsuccessful intender, and it can, like I said, it can be down to the level of I just don't train as many times as I want to each week, or it can just be the fact that you want to train and you don't at all. So be thinking about yourself and also thinking about friends and family. And I came up with 3 different ways that I help people in coaching. And I know if you've been listening to the podcast a while, you've heard these things before, but how I go about these things. So 3 different ways. The first one's going to be a SMART goal and going small. And so this has to do with setting your goals. So SMART goal is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. So the goal has to be very specific, a very, very specific goal. Like I want to run this 5K, this 10K, this marathon, this half marathon in this amount of time. I want to lift this amount of weight. I want to lose this amount of weight. Very specific. And then measurable. So yeah, again, if it's how much weight you want to lift, can we measure your progress on a week-to-week basis? Can we see that we're making progress? If it's losing weight, can we do that on a scale? If it's a run time, can we see and track that that's going down? And then attainable. Is it even something that you can do? Because if you are back squatting 150 pounds right now and your goal is, I want to be back squatting 500 pounds by the end of the year, not going to happen. It's just not attainable. And same with running. If your fastest mile time right now is 11 minutes and you're like, I want to run a 5:30 by the end of the year, it's just not going to happen. It's not attainable. You're not setting the realistic time constraints for that being attainable. It's not that it's impossible. It normally has to do with your time frame. Because if you run an 11-minute mile and you want to go down to a 5:30, sure, it's attainable. But what if that's a 3-year goal and not a 1-year goal? And you don't realize that. So making sure that it's attainable. Realistic, and that kind of goes with attainable, making sure that your goal is within your scope. And so let me rephrase that, because attainable and realistic are similar, but to me, attainable is like, is it possible? And it's, yeah, in a perfect world, it's possible to get you down to a 5:30 mile. But is it realistic is something different to me. Realistic is, okay, it is possible for me to run that fast or lift that much weight or lose that much weight, but is it realistic? Because what's required of wanting to achieve that goal might be more training in a week, more training time, like hours spent training, than you actually have. You're like, I realistically only have 2 to 3 hours to train each week. So if you come to me and you're like, I can train 2 hours per week, I run a 12-minute mile and my goal is a 5:30 mile, I would say that's not realistic. You need to set a new goal. It's not realistic. You can't do it. And if you can, then it might just take a whole lot of time, but still, I'm not going to think that's possible. It's not realistic. Realistic to me is realistic within your confines. We all have confines. We all have a job. We all have family. We all have something that's like just dictating where our time is spent. If we all had 5-6 hours a day to dedicate to our health and fitness and all that stuff, then things would be a lot easier, but we don't all have that kind of time. So it has to be realistic. And then the last one is time-bound and a SMART goal. So time-bound, also self-explanatory, making sure that it is within a time frame. So within the next 4 weeks, within the next 12 weeks, within the next year, and within the next 3 years. And I think time-bound, my last little tip on that is know your level and capacity in correlation to your time bound. I've done a lot of goal setting and achieved a lot of goals. So I think it's very possible for me to be like, I will achieve this thing in 2 years. But if you haven't done a lot of goal setting and goal achieving, I don't think that you should set goals that long term yet. Get a few smaller wins under your belt in the time bound section of a SMART goal. So if you're newer to setting goals, let's just go back to that example. If you run a 12-minute mile and you want to run a 5:30 and you're like, okay, how do I do that? Let's not focus too much on the 5:30. Let's get the 12 down to 11 in the next 12 weeks. And then let's do that again. Let's just keep doing that, or 8 weeks or whatever. Let's go really small on the time bound if you're newer to setting and achieving goals. That way you have some micro goals. You can still have that big lofty goal out in the future, but it's not where I'd focus all my time and attention, because setting goals out that far can just be a little discouraging if you don't achieve them, and it'll make you not want to set goals in the future. That leads me to my next point, which is all in this first piece of advice. The framework I have for you is going really small. And this is for people who really are in that unsuccessful intender. If you say you want to work out a number of times a week or do something and you're not doing it, you're just not doing it, that's also discouraging. And I think that when it comes down to behavioral change, we need a lot of mental wins. And so you need to go as small as possible. And this is always hard for me because another thing that I work on is I coach and mentor other coaches who coach people. And sometimes the coaches overly focus on the programming, the mathematics, the macros, but they're not realizing that they're dealing with a life jacket individual. Because you can master all that stuff, but when you're dealing with a life jacket individual and we're only really worried about behavioral change, then the programming doesn't matter that much. What they're doing, to be honest, it doesn't matter that much. And I'll let the cat out of the bag there. Like, just do some physical activity. But if they're saying, hey, I want to work out 4 times a week, I've never worked out in my life, I want to lose 100 pounds. Okay, let's set that goal of 4. And then they say they want to do 4 and they do 0. So you just got to go smaller. You got to go to whatever is achievable. Be like, hey, we want to work out 1 time this week. They're like, how am I going to lose all this weight if I want to work out 1 time? I'm like, well, I need you to change your behavior, your habits, how you think. I need to rewire your brain. So I need you to achieve some things. So all I want you to do this week is work out 1 time and don't drink any soda. And when you go this small, this is how I've seen the biggest life changes in people who were the life jacket, life preserver individuals, is when you go this small. So if you're looking to help a family member or a friend and you're not truly a coach and you don't have a lot of experience doing these things, just tell them to go small. Don't be like, hey, if they're like, hey, you're fit, I want to be fit, what do I need to do? And you're like, great, here's my 6-day-a-week program, I run, I do this, here's a program, all this stuff. Don't go down that path. And sometimes this can annoy people too, because sometimes I'll go so small with them, they're almost offended. And then that takes just more explanation and communication of, hey, you didn't get into this situation by making 1 or 2 bad decisions. You got into the situation you're in, if you're like really out of shape, really overweight, through a series of bad decisions, like several bad decisions every single day, maybe for decades. So I need you to do a couple of good decisions. We're going to slowly work ourselves out of this. So go really small, smaller than you think that you should with these people. And it doesn't have to be small forever. It's okay, next week we're only going to work out once. They do it. They get that small win. It's okay, can we do 2? And they still only do 1. You're like, okay, no, the goal is back to 1. And they get 1. They're like, okay, now can we do 2? And they do 2. And you're like, great, you did 2. Let's stick at 2 for 2 weeks. And then we go to 3. And they're getting these training sessions in each week. So go really small. Now, the second thing I'll say is just simple action planning. And this can go a long way, and I don't see people doing it enough. Every Sunday, I pull up my calendar because I have a very busy schedule. Incredibly busy schedule. I don't just have blank space all over my calendar, and I'm sure that you don't either. And that's because my day starts very early with my kids, and then right after I drop my kids off at school, I have work, I have several meetings, things that I need to get done, just a lot of things on the calendar. And then shortly after I end work, I have a very short break, and then it's, for me specifically, kids, sports, and activities. Really until the evening time. Like, we're talking like probably around 8, 9 o'clock. We have to fit dinner in somewhere. And this is not me complaining about my schedule, but if I just was like, you know what, I know I want to work out this week. I don't really know where or when, but I'm going to get it done. I'll get 5 in this week. I would never exercise if that's how I ran my schedule. If I was like, yeah, I'm sure I'll get it in there somewhere. And then if I was like, really, no, I'm going to get it done no matter what, then all my training sessions would be at like 9 p.m., which isn't going to be good for sleep or anything else. So really, you need to look at your calendar and be like, where can I realistically fit this in? And this has gotten even more important with me doing longer runs. I've mentioned on the podcast that I have 2 and 3 hour runs now sometimes in my training program. Those have to be planned well in advance because They have to be done, like I have to get them done like super early sometimes. I don't have time to do that kind of stuff in the middle of the day. Those have to be planned well in advance. So simple action planning. If you could build a simple habit of, okay, Sunday night, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to look at my calendar, what's on the calendar, and where do the workouts fit? Okay, where do the workouts fit? Because if you can do that, that's, I want to say, more than half the battle. That's like 80% of the battle where it's going to fit. So simple action planning can go a long way. Now, the last one is environmental. And this is trying to shape your environment to what you're trying to achieve. Now, most of us already have an environment, right? We have a spouse, we have kids, we have our coworkers, all these kind of things, and who's supportive and who's not. And sometimes it can be difficult if you have a spouse that's not super supportive. Maybe you both aren't into fitness, or maybe people like that and they're trying to get into it. You just have to find a way for these things to work into your environment. And it goes back to that action planning. But like environmentally for me, I'm on an ultra marathon training program right now. My family's just been super accustomed to me exercising 5 to 6 times a week for 1 hour a day, sometimes even less. That's been my consistent schedule for a long time. Now I mentioned I have these like a 3-hour run coming up in my programming. That's not something that my family's used to. Environmentally, that's not supported. Doesn't matter how into fitness I am. Like if my kids have 3 games on a Saturday and the only gap I have that would be family time that's not a game, I'm doing a 3-hour run in the middle of the day, that's not going to fly. I don't even try it. Like I just know wife's not going to be okay with that. Kids not going to be okay with that. They're not going to see me. It's going to feel like we didn't even have a weekend. So what do I have to do? Within my environment, I have to wake up early. I have to start running at 4 sometimes if I want to fit in that long run. I have to get that done. I have to, again, action planning, but also know it's not just the plan, it's my environment. Because I might have 3 hours on a Saturday to do a run, but my environment doesn't support that. And I don't want them to support that. I don't want them to support me going off and doing 3 hours of something like that in the middle of the day. So you have to know what your environment is and how to place those things in it. And so, again, if your environment's not supportive of what you're doing, go small. Or if your friends or family's environment is not supportive, go small. Like what will they support? Can it be 10-minute walk, 15-minute walk, 100 push-ups a day? What does your environment allow? And then just grow from there. So ultimately, everything is start small and grow from there. Now, hopefully, you can apply these SMART goals, going small, action planning, environmental, like setting yourself up with for success by some environmental planning too, and setting up your environment for the right capacity that you want. Now, when you do all these things, the reason it works is because all you need after all these things are taken care of, you have goals, they're SMART goals, you've gone small if necessary, you have your action plan of when they're going to happen, your environment set up for you in order to achieve your goals. All you need now is that tiny spark to get it done. Because I also know what that feels like when it comes up to it. You know what? It's the time to exercise. That's what my calendar says right now. And maybe you don't feel like you've gotten enough work done in the day and you're going to feel like you're behind. Maybe you just don't want to. There's some reason. There's always going to be that reason why you might not. Maybe you shouldn't exercise, right? There's always going to be that reason. But I want to push back on that thought and be like, this is your life, like your actual health. Fitness should never be treated as if I get time today, I will. It should be treated as an absolute mandatory thing that has to get done. Just like everything else in your life that you do on a daily basis, whether that is taking care of your kids or going to work and doing all those things, they're mandatory. You do them, right? You do them because you have to get them done. Fitness needs to be that same level of intentionality and motivation, that it's mandatory activity. So when it pops up on your calendar, like now all I'm asking, if you've done everything else, is to activate that spark. You got this trigger point, right? It's on the calendar, here it comes. It's just enough energy to step out of your chair, step out of your work environment, step out of your bed and do that one thing. Just go do it. Just start moving towards it. No matter how much you don't want to, all you need is this tiny spark. If you've set everything else up in your life, you need to take action on that tiny spark and you can start moving forward. All right, that's all I got for this one. Remember, if you are a really fit individual, you're a ship. Help out. Help out your friends and family. You owe it to them. You owe it to them to teach them some stuff, point them in the right direction, And that could be simple. You don't have to become their coach. I'm not trying to make an unqualified person become their coach, but maybe help them out, point them in the right direction, share some resources with them, share this podcast episode specifically with them. Let them listen to it, or just share some of the ideas about how they could plan an action plan and set up their environment for success. If you are one of the ships, if you're not a ship, maybe you're an unsuccessful intender. Apply some of these strategies. Get it done. You're not far off. You are probably doing some of what you want to do. You're just not doing all you want to do. You're almost there. Don't give up, all right? Don't give up. It just takes a little bit more effort, a little bit more planning. And once these things turn into habits, you'll be a successful intender all day. And to all my successful intenders out there at Garage Gym Athlete who are getting it done, and some who've been getting it done for years, thanks for being a part of the community. You're awesome. I really appreciate it. I appreciate every single one of you. And I'm looking forward to 2024. It's going to be awesome. I've got a lot of stuff coming up in the very short future. I really look forward to announcing it. I'm finally going to be able to. Now, if you want to be maybe you're an unsuccessful intender, you're listening to this, you're not a Garage Gym Athlete, you're not following the programming yet, we might be what you need to become a successful intender. We might be it. Because all you need to become a successful intender, programming plan, some action planning on your end, the community, we have all the things in place to help you become a successful intender. So if you're an unsuccessful intender listening to this, go to GarageGymAthlete.com, sign up for a free trial, become part of the community. We would love to have you. But remember, if you don't kill comfort, comfort will kill you.